Well, I recently returned from Port-au-Prince, and visually, when you land in the capital, it doesn't look like a place that was hit by an earthquake. That's your first realization. The rubble, it's gone. You get the sense that it's a place that's under construction. But as you look closer, you realize that a lot of it is more visual, and that when you peel back the visual, you realize that very much the progress has been slow, that people lack the economic means to really move forward, that while people left the tent cities, more than 90% of the 1.5 million who were in the tents, they are no longer in the tents, but you have to say, where are they? Today we have the largest bidonville, slum, and it was developed after the earthquake. Canaan, Jerusalem, it's on the outskirts of the airport. And when you go there, you see concrete homes, you see shanties. This did not exist before this earthquake. And they're still tent cities, even if you don't see them when you're driving the main roads. But if you look to the side, you look down, or you turn a corner, they're still there. And then you start to realize that these people have been living in these tents for 5 years. And you see it with the tarps. You see how they've deteriorated. You can barely make out which NGO, which country donated it. So in that sense, the earthquake, the legacy of the earthquake, the struggle of getting past the earthquake, it is still very much in the fabric of Haitians and in their lives and in their day-to-day existence, even if you don't immediately see it when you arrive in the capital. The biggest challenge of the earthquake was not just removing 1.5 million people out of the tent cities, but it was also, how do you provide permanent housing? And there are a lot of promises by the U.S. government, by the Haitian government, by others to build permanent housing. But today what we've seen is that despite the fact that there has been some houses, they still have not realized their goals. For instance, Monacarbrit, which is a social housing development that the Haitian government financed through Petro-Caribbean funds, it was supposed to be 3,000 houses, but only 1,280 of those houses have actually been built. And of those, only 480 are actually occupied. When you go there, it's like a ghost city. It's an abandoned place. There's no market, there's no church. There is a school inside, but everything has to be improvised. It is so far away from the city center that residents say that once you're there, you're there. It's difficult for you to leave. So this is not materialized the way that everybody had hoped it would. There is a lack of vibrancy of life in the place. And then when you go to the north, just outside of Cape Haitian, to a development that the U.S. government financed, Caracol, you see these pastel-colored houses, and they look really nice from the road. And then you step inside, and when you talk to the residents, and you realize that there are a lot of problems. For one, the houses are small. The residents say they thought they would have been bigger. There's been a lot of issues in terms of the construction. The roofs are leaking. The windows have fallen off. The frames out of the door. The place floods when it rains. And this is something that the U.S. government is very much aware of, and they're now looking into this with the contractors. But these are disappointments, right? Because despite the few successes that there has been with housing, when you have projects like Monacarbrit and you have Caracol, for people, they've become symbolic of the lack of progress, with this earthquake, the fact that we didn't necessarily build back better, as was the mantra after the disaster. After the earthquake, one of the things that happens, we had a lot of volunteer doctors and nurses who went down to Haiti and provided a lot of medical assistance to people who were in need. And one place that really received and was really on the front line of this disaster was the main hospital in Port-au-Prince, known as L'Hôpital Général, or the General Hospital. And today, though, that hospital still has not been rebuilt. It is an $83 million project being financed by France and the U.S. and the Haitian government. And this was supposed to be an example of coordination, better coordination. And so it's still struggling. I would say that if there has been some improvement, after the earthquake that you really can see. It has been an area of healthcare. Haiti has really done a lot with the assistance of the United States to address a number of issues: tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS, even cholera, which we saw 10 months after for the first time. 10 months after the disaster, Haiti recorded its first case of cholera. But today, people are not dying in the huge numbers that they were initially from cholera. So there have been improvements in healthcare, but still, this hospital has not been built, and that is something that you notice. 5 years later, politics is very much an issue. The country right now is in a deepening political crisis. There are protests. There have been protests for at least the last 2-3 years. And what we've seen in the last couple of weeks and months is that they have been ramping up. And the opposition to President Michel Martelly are demanding that he resign. There are efforts right now going on in terms of the international community and some of the opposition political parties to see if Haitians and if Haiti can get past this. But for 3 years, President Michel Martelly and the opposition have been at loggerheads. Basically about elections has been at the center point, but there are a lot of issues there, and this is starting to impact the progress of the country in terms of the quake because it really can't get past it. We are starting to see some violence as well in these protests. I mean, the country has made some improvements in terms of security. Kidnapping is way, way down, and that has been a plus, and they've really tried to address the security issues, but there are concerns today about the police and the lack of confidence in the Haitian National Police, and also increasing violence in the coming days as we approach this anniversary. Political tensions have been really high in Haiti in the last couple of weeks, and what we've seen last month in December was the resignation of Prime Minister Laurent Lamont, and this was after a presidential commission listed a couple of recommendations in order to try to calm things down. And one of the things it asked for was the resignation of the Prime Minister. But despite the resignation of the Prime Minister, the tensions remain. The country still is trying to agree on a consensus government, a consensus Prime Minister. And with Michel Martelly right now approaching his final year in office, everybody's waiting to see what will happen. Will he be able to finish his term peacefully, or will things deteriorate? The interesting thing about the earthquake was that a lot of people expected for Haitians to get into boats and for Haitians to leave. And we watched this, and for weeks and months, Haitians did not leave. They did not get on boats. And I think it's because they were really hopeful that something was going to happen, that here they were hit by this huge disaster. The world was watching, the world was coming to their assistance, and that their lives really were going to change. But unfortunately today, and since last year, what we've started to see is that the migration numbers are up. Haitians are increasingly getting on boats. They're taking these dangerous voyages. They're not just trying to get straight to Florida anymore. They're going through the Mona Passage via the Dominican Republic, which is very dangerous. They're still trying to go into the Turks and Caicos, as well as the Bahamas. And when you look at a place like Ile de la Tortue, which was not hit by the earthquake, even though they felt it, but they were not struck by it, the level of desperation, of misery that the residents talk about. Being on this island, there's no water, there's no economy, there's no food, there's no hope. For them, they say, you're already dead. So what if you take the risk and you actually die? So what we've started to see is increasing number of them taking these dangerous voyages and trying to leave.